Farmers produce valuable agricultural products, but also contribute to enhancing the value of Japanese agricultural products. Their creativity and perseverance not only bring bumper harvests in the international market. Let's explore how Japanese farmers harvest an edible plant native to various regions of Japan. It has been used as a spring dish since ancient times. Udo is divided into Yama Udo and Nanka Udo, thousands of tons of agricultural products. Udo is a both grow from early spring to about April. However, the appearance is contradictory. Yama Udo is green and looks white, while Nanka Udo is white. Yama Udo consists of thick, fleshy, uprights that average 60 to 90 centimeters. These differences in appearance correlate with the environment in which they grow, and 2 to 5 centimeters in diameter. Despite its ability to grow to large size, meanwhile, Nanka Udo is grown through the softening agriculture, which shields them from sunlight. After 30 to 40 days, Udo is Yama Udo is still harvested seasonally because of its young and tender stems. Because the area planted with Udo trees when it reaches a height of about 70 centimeters. Peak harvest season is usually from December to April. It is only about 1 meter high. Harvesting underground is very difficult. Another person was waiting on the ground to lift the wooden box. Timing is important after harvest because Udo will quickly turn. Because their work requires constant squatting, many farmers suffer from leg and back problems. Farmers carefully cut the Udo and wrapped it to take it out of the tunnel. The Udo growing industry in Takikawa quickly became very popular so that Udo was less affected by the weather when exposed to sunlight. Therefore, farmers gradually switched to growing and harvesting indoors. People are often concerned about the acts of wild vegetables, but for Udo, it can even be eaten raw. Udo's flavor changes the image of wild vegetables and achieved high yields of about 450 tons per year. That's why this plant became Takikawa's specialty. The fresh and refreshing taste lingers afterward. It has a crunchy sound and a faint sweetness spreads in your mouth. When you bite into a piece of freshly harvested Udo, the second largest lake in Japan, to have the highest lotus root production in Japan. The land along the lake is fertile. Now let's visit Kasumigora. Lotus roots around Kasumigora Lake are harvested from July to March. Lake water are cut off to prevent the lotus from growing further. Every year at harvest time, all lotus stems and leaves and has abundant water to help lotus roots thrive. Lotus roots grow underground, dormant. This means that lotus roots harvested in the same lake area may have different flavors, depending on the time, and gradually accumulate starch from summer to winter. It becomes more flexible as the sugar content turns into starch. The mud made traveling difficult, and finding lotus will taste as sweet as pears. Farmers continue harvesting until May, when the harvest. Young summer lotus farmers said it takes patience and good tech because lotus roots may not grow straight in the soil. Was certainly not an easy task to dig out the entire lotus root. On average, each kilogram of lotus farmers must be gentle and not to be able to sell them at a good price. Costs about 2.8 USD. While they dug into the mud to find lotus roots, the farmers had to kneel in the water up to their chest. They use water jets to search for lotus roots by the lotus field is about 50 to 60 centimeters deep. This is also a way to prevent the skin of the careful processes are not only delicious, their whiteness and appearance all root from being damaged. Lotus roots transported and go through the washing process many times. At Renkan Sankyo Day, lotus roots are high to their value. After being transported to the processing facility, the lotus roots are cut off and canned one by one and shipped within 2 days of receiving farmers' orders. about 10 to 20 centimeters in diameter, creating optimal growing conditions for the shiitake mushroom. Farmers carefully select oak trees. Besides lotus root, Japan is also with the most delicious mushrooms. Have you ever seen millions of shiitake mushrooms growing in the forest? To implant shiitake mushroom embryos. Next, farmers will drill small holes in, then brought to the shiitake mushroom growing to begin their growth process. Oak wood is neatly set apart depending on the size of the shiitake mushrooms. To ensure the shiitake embryo is the mushroom embryo is implanted into the hole using a special. These holes are drilled about 10 to 15 after the shiitake mushroom embryos are transplanted into the log at the correct position and depth. Each log will yield 2 to 4 times more shiitake mushrooms depending on hole size and weather conditions. They are placed in suitable positions to wait for the shiitake mushrooms to ensure a harvest. Japanese people often go into the harvesting is done by hand, with farmers care and harvest each tree by hand. When full, they will go to the place where the mushrooms are, pulling the shiitake mushrooms out of the logs. They use plastic baskets to store finished products and preserve to prevent damage. The slow growth process and natural habitat of shiitake mushrooms give them a dense texture, rich flavor, and nutritional value. Growing wild shiitake mushrooms provides economic opportunity for local communities in Japan. Output at a relatively high price. In the southern provinces of Japan, shiitake mushrooms are grown the most in the country, accounting for 50 to 55%. Each year, only a limited amount of natural shiitake mushrooms can be harvested. Price. While exported dried shiitake mushrooms are even more expensive. Upon arrival at the drying factory, that's why fresh shiitake mushrooms have. The shiitake mushrooms are inspected again. Remove water from the shiitake mushrooms, including appropriate temperature and time, and arrange them evenly together. The drying process takes place under strict control to remove unsuitable plants. Next, remove the soil residue. At the same time, it still retains flavor and nutrients. Japan is also famous for lingzi mushrooms. This mushroom has been used for thousands of years. In addition to delicious shiitake mushrooms, 2 weeks before being drilled, one log can withstand the growth of 15 Ganoderma mushrooms. After felling the tree, the logs were inoculated with Ganoderma mushrooms in traditional medicine to treat health. Ganoderma mushrooms. But after a few months, when the lingzi mushroom has fully developed buried underground, farmers take a long dating Ganoderma mushrooms. It takes 9 months before you can to complete the entire process of growing. It can be harvested and processed in many different ways. Compared to shiitake mushrooms, the magic of Ganoderma mushrooms comes from the compounds locked inside its cell walls. Wondering what makes it different from the millions of other mushrooms growing in the forest, to each 1-inch diameter of the tree. For example, a 6-inch diameter log will grow 90 days to harvest. Interestingly, the yield is mushrooms have a slower growth rate. Farmers have to wait 70 until the first harvest. As the lingzi mushroom matures, mushrooms in about 6 years. This means that larger diameter logs will take longer. Mature Ganoderma mushrooms are 1 to 4 inches thick to turn reddish brown, and the spores fall off the cap. They have started to decompose. Harvesting, because when harvested late, if they turn brown, they tend to choose Ganoderma mushrooms with white bellies. When farmers pluck Ganoderma mushrooms by holding the root with one hand and pulling up with the other, will be dried at temperatures below 50 degrees. After washing with water, the Ganoderma mushrooms. Cabbage is a healthy food and rich, depending on the variety, they are ready to harvest. Finally, we visit cabbage fields in Japan. Nutrients. After 70 to 115 days from planting, if it is not possible to harvest immediately, smaller heads of cabbage can continue to grow for the next harvest. The head of cabbage should be firm, compact, with tightly wrapped outer leaves. The base of the cabbage will be 4 to 6 inches across. Farmers use a knife to cut the head of cabbage from the stem, leaving a few leaves on the outside to protect the cabbage during storage. Farmers often harvest in cool weather, which can help maintain freshness and flavor. On large commercial cabbage farms, harvesting is done through automated machines attached to tractors. Cabbage moves along a conveyor belt. These machines lift the entire tree out. Farmers continue to remove damaged outer leaves. After that, the cabbage is loaded into containers and waits for transport to the warehouse for storage. Farmers are operating machinery, moving it through cabbage fields to systematically harvest, which greatly reduces the amount of labor required to harvest by hand. Depending on the size and quantity of the machine, it can harvest multiple rows of cabbage simultaneously, from banana orchards in Thailand to apple fields in Japan. As dawn breaks across Asian fields, now let's visit fruit orchards. The fruit harvest appears like a vivid picture to see how Asian farmers harvest millions of tons of fruit and then remain stable for 30 to 35 years. However, it all depends on the selected variety. Fruit yield will increase gradually each year. The apple orchard begins to bear fruit from the 7th or 8th year. Production reached 94,600. A farm in Japan has an area of 114,000 acres of apple trees, bringing in revenue of about 1,003. The apple industry has become a pillar in 16 million USD. First of all, farmers will determine the optimal ripeness for picking that helps increase people's income and promote the rapid development of the local economy, so for successful preservation. Correct ripeness is not only important for quality and expensive. When apples in fruit early is often both inefficient in Asia are often harvested by hand during storage. Apple farmers will climb ladders or use support tools to carefully pick each apple. Sure, they bruise easily and this is an extremely labor-intensive that predominates in the production of dessert apples. It appears mainly in large fruit orchards, accompanied by the participation of a significant. Farmers handle apples as gently as an egg. They carefully place all the apples in the picking box to ensure the job is completed. Of seasonal workers. On average, an apple orchard needs about 10 to 12 harvesting workers. Do not drop the fruit or jostle it during transportation. This is the only way to prevent the fruit from before being distributed to the market. The harvest usually lasts until late October. The production cycle begins again. Once harvest and sales are complete, at the processing site, apples are graded based on size, and fresh apples are usually available in early November and quality. Apples are to remove dirt and pesticides, environment to retain freshness longer. Stored in cold storage or humidity sweetness. Have you ever tasted the taste of durian? Now let's explore how farmers harvest this unique fruit. Inside the spiky shell is a peaking in July and August. When durians ripen, their spines turn from yellow-brown to dark brown with a characteristic strong smell. Durian season in Malaysia usually lasts from May to September. When durians mature, a spot on their stem will. However, durian harvested at this stage is not suitable for transportation or long-term storage, allowing them to naturally fall off the tree. Farmers often tie strings to the durian. That is also the reason why durians can fall at any time. To ensure that farmers can collect fallen durians immediately, This is to help prevent the fruit from turning brown and damaging the durian's thorns. Matured. When the durian strings to each durian fruit, when it is professional durian farms lower the fruit and harvest. Immediately wraps tightly around the durian fruit, preventing the durian fruit from falling to the ground and being damaged. At this time, farmers can care ripens and falls from the tree branch, the slow during this period. After being picked, they have to go through a series because the garden's productivity is relative. At the beginning and end of the harvest season, durian is usually harvested only once before reaching you. For further classification, durians are quickly transported to the collection center. Its thick skin and rough appearance. Durian is not suitable for rough transportation because once durian fruits rub against its conventional preservation, fresh durian can be quickly frozen by exposing them. The durian spines will break and be susceptible to pathogens. With nitrogen. Frozen durian can be stored at -10°C for 2 years, still retaining its original flavor, color, texture. With its growing popularity in domestic and international markets, dragon fruit is famous. Dragon fruit cultivation offers its vibrant color, exotic appearance, and potential health benefits. Opportunities for farmers and meets growing and environmental conditions. Dragon fruit tree demand. Depending on the can begin to bear fruit 12 to 15 months after flowering. Farmers can enter the harvest season to flower in May to June. The growth after planting. Each year, dragon fruit is quite short. Similar to other fruits, dragon fruit, because ripeness will affect the quality, must also pay great attention to harvest time, risk of spoilage of the fruit. Farmers choose fruit that is not fully ripe or has turned pink outside of the skin have begun to wither. At the same time, when pressed, the fruit deflates slightly. The skin has a bright color and the scale. Picking is also quite simple. It can be harvested with scissors or a knife. You just need to gently separate the fruit from the stem. Besides, dragon or storage. Early morning or cool afternoon is the appropriate time to harvest. The harvested fruit is immediately transferred to a place that can avoid sunlight before packing to avoid hot direct sunlight for up to 17 days. Increases the temperature in the fruit. If stored in optimal conditions, usually at 10°C, dragon fruit will retain its. Goodbye dragon fruit garden to protect them from bumps and bruises. Now let's go to banana garden in Thailand. When the bananas mature, farmers place pads between the banana bunches. Then the bananas are wrapped in cloth or plastic about 10 to 13 weeks after the plant flowers, to repel insects. Bananas are ready to be harvested. Bananas are always harvested by hand with two-person teams who work well together. A person will use a knife to cut the banana bunch from the stem, person's shoulder pad. At this point, the chamber is lowered onto it. If the bananas are pulled too along the cable, it can damage the fruit. To move bunches of bananas to processing, farms in the delta can use a cable cast. Then these bananas are placed in a water. A small, sharp knife is used to bunch of bananas out of the bunch to remove the pus. Finally, bananas are graded when released to the market according to size and quality. Bananas are packaged whole and in cardboard boxes with plastic lining. Each box is guaranteed to have a net weight of 13 kg. Philippines. To see how farmers harvest millions of pineapples. This is the leading country with a production. Now we go to the pineapple field of about 2.7 million tons. Of apple growing area is estimated to be over 40,000 hectares. 32 months for a pineapple to mature. Apples per year. The country, under good sunny conditions, it takes acidic. Even pineapple will be seriously damaged at a temperature of 28 degrees. Prolonged cold and freezing temperatures slow the ripening process and make the fruit. However, size and color changes are not reliable indicators of ripeness. Choosing the right time to harvest will affect the entire, because pineapple is a fruit that does not continue to ripen after harvest. Pineapples are not ready to ripen until most of the fruit has turned orange-yellowed. Before harvesting, millions of pineapples will be picked by of pineapple products. Every year, about 3,200 workers flock to pineapple farms in Indonesia to harvest. Need to carefully prepare protective gear and gloves for packaging or processing into other. After harvesting, pineapples will be sent to factories because the sawtooth-like leaves can hurt them. Pineapples, such as canned pineapples and